Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Automation through Transformation in Geospatial Authorities webinar. My name is Richard Ibarra. I'm a marketing specialist here at Esri, and I will be your moderator today. This webinar is being recorded. We will send you out an email afterwards to point you towards the recording if you'd like to view it again or share it with your colleagues. There will be a Q&A section at the end of the webinar. You can type your questions into the questions window, and we will address them at the appropriate time. There will also be poll questions to give you the opportunity to interactively respond to questions and to see the collective results. Note, individual results will not be published, just a percent response to each poll question. We have two presenters today. Your first presenter is Mark Seigan. He is the industry manager for mapping and statistics here at Esri. Mark has over 34 years of experience working in GIS and mapping, including management positions at Esri, Navtech, now here, and Rand Valley. Mark is actively participating in the United Nations Committee of Experts on Global Geospatial Information Management, or UNGGIM, and on the board of directors of the International Map Industry Association. We also have with us Steve Snow, who is an industry specialist here at Esri for mapping and statistics. Steve has worked with GIS for the past 19 years. Before coming to Esri, Steve served as an Army Engineer Officer and NOAA Corps Officer, with a focus on remote sensing, surveying, and charting. I'll now turn the presentation over to Mark.
Thanks, Richard. Today we're going to go over automation to transformation using product on demand. We'll look at the US Geological Survey's implementation of product on demand and their use of product on demand in disaster response. Many organizations are challenged with sharing information most effectively, including how to best deliver our authoritative information to our customers and what their needs are, and at affordable cost. How to best ensure our organization is supporting decision makers on the most important issues our countries are facing today. And how can we make our information products available on demand 24/7 for self-service mapping? Today we're going to show you some ways that we can address those challenges. We're going to do this through the automation of map products on demand that enables you to deliver your information products quickly and efficiently when and where your customers need them. We'll demonstrate how you can provide your products on demand for self-service mapping 24/7 to meet your customers' needs. And we'll give you an example of how to best provide that information to support decision makers and respond timely to issues such as disaster response and recovery. Our countries are facing many challenges today. Your information provides the basis for decision makers to find solutions to these challenges. By applying your authoritative information to issues around economic development, national security, social and environmental challenges, we're contributing to our countries addressing these issues. Take, for example, disaster response, particularly in the recent hurricanes of Harvey, Irma, and Maria. We can see from this picture that decision makers at all levels, all the way up to the highest levels, benefit from GIS. In order to be able to respond quickly to these types of issues, many mapping and geospatial authorities are automating their processes and transforming their response to their nations. The ability to provide product on demand plays an important role. As geospatial organizations, we have to ask ourselves, can we support some of the following? Can we support high volume demands with quick turnaround times for our authoritative information? Can we consistently provide the most current map data? And do we have the ability to automate our map production while retaining the required map specifications that our customers expect? Automating mapping is enabling geospatial authorities to deliver their current data, meet their customers' needs, reduce their costs, and free up resources to create new information products. Esri is enabling our users to create standard map products on demand, anywhere, anytime, and on any device from your most up-to-date authoritative information. Users can do this by simply accessing the Product on Demand app from any device, defining the area of interest and information product they need from the authoritative data, and the user gets a standard looking map through the web app with up-to-date data. This is allowing your users to have access to your authoritative data when and where they need it, 24/7. Through map automation, GIS is providing us the ability to automate your organization's production by applying your cartographic rules to your most current authoritative data. Then running automated geoprocessing tools through Python scripts and other tools to then generate the production of maps, geospatial data, and other information products. Just providing your authoritative information in many different ways and products. This automation is what's behind the Product on Demand app, or POD for short, which is part of the Esri production mapping product. It's providing real-time cartographic information from your authoritative data and serving it up out over the web. Now my colleague Steve Snow will show you what the Product on Demand app looks like in action. Steve?
Thanks, Mark. Let's take a look at the Product on Demand, or POD application. POD is a JavaScript web mapping application which lets you generate products or maps on demand. It's a self-service mapping application that allows authoritative content producers the ability to share their geographic information outside their GIS. So with the standard Product on Demand, we have 1 to 25,000 map series, as well as 1 to 50,000 map series that can be automatically generated, as well as 3 dynamic mapping products, such as dynamic area, dynamic scale, and dynamic page. For this demonstration, we're going to go to Lone Rock, Utah. So as you can see, Lone Rock lies on the edge of 2 map sheets. We have the Draper map sheet to the north, and we have the Lehigh map sheet to the south. You typically only get partial information from one of the map extents. Now, the nice thing about POD is that you can do custom extents. Custom extents still match the size and page layout of the standard extents. You can think of it as a way to move your extents so that it is centered over your area of interest. So this may take a couple minutes to generate. I'm going to go and show you a little bit about our dynamic map products while that's generating. So dynamic products allow you to change your extents and do automatic calculations. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the area over Florida to exaggerate what's going on, and we'll set the page size at A0, and we'll set the scale at 1 to 500,000. So we're calculating from a 3D globe and projecting onto a flat surface right now. So there's the current product. And what's going on is there's always going to be distortion when we're going from this globe to a flat map. So I'm going to show you this distortion and how POD automatically calculates the extent of your on-demand maps. So as we move this north, you're going to see that it's going to automatically generate those extents to account for the distortion as we move north. And then as we move south, it's going to keep customizing those extents. So this just shows a little bit of the automation that's available for your products. I'm going to go back to our original map. It looks like it's finished generating. You can see that it's all ready to go here. And we're going to give it a custom name. We're going to call it Lone Rock. And we'll go ahead and hit this export on the products. So luckily beforehand, I went ahead and downloaded this so we don't have to watch it download over the internet. So you can see that our file name was saved there. Our road networks are automatically created from the latest data, as well as the contours, polygons. We've applied our standard grid. And then as we go down to the bottom, you can see that the marginalia from our standard products is applied to this custom extent, such as the scale bar, the legend. Also being able to know where we're at with respect, and then geographically, and then being able to see where our customer extents are in relation to our standard products, such as the Draper map sheet to the north and the Lehigh map sheet to the south of our area. It'll also straddle Dromedae and Timpanogos Cave to the east. So in conclusion, what you've seen is the ability to apply custom extents to our Lone Rock, Utah, and also setting up automated dynamic mapping products. Thank you. I'll go ahead and send this back to you, Mark.
All right, thanks, Steve. So what you just saw Steve do was to select an area of interest on demand and create a map. So he went out to the authoritative data, the current data of the area, grabbed that data, dropped it onto the map data frame, symbolized the data in real time, and added the appropriate map surround information and legend, and generated a complete map to the specifications that were required for that map product. All of that was done entirely automated. You saw it in real time. And what used to take weeks is now taking minutes. It's what you literally saw there. So we're going to take a moment and ask you some questions and get some feedback. So you can see in the poll question there, does your organization have a need to create product on demand? And you can just select one of those. The poll's open now, and you can select yes, no, or not applicable. And we'll just give you a few seconds just to put your answers in there. Some of you are a little shy, so we'll give you another few seconds here. And let's see, it looks like about 50% of you, we'll go ahead and close the poll out. And it looks like about 50% of you are saying yes, and 25% are no, and 25 not applicable. So thanks for your input. It's good to get some feedback from you. And just as a reminder, we're going to take questions at the end of this webinar, and you can just type those questions in at any time under the questions window, and we'll get to those at the end. So now let's take a look at the U.S. Geological Surveys, or the USGS for short, and their product on demand. This is a presentation I did earlier this year with Carrie Cron, the director of the USGS National Geospatial Technology Operations Center. Carrie described how and why they started with Esri's product on demand, and how they were able to use it effectively in a number of disasters that hit our nation last year. So the USGS product on demand, or POD for short, was first looked at by USGS from implementation to replace their aging US topo map export. What they were looking for in Esri's commercial off-the-shelf software, or COTS, was a replacement for this customized USGS US topo export. And they wanted it to be a cloud deployment so that it could be scalable. They wanted to add some capabilities to what they had previously, including the custom areas of interest, or the custom extents that you saw Steve just show, and being able to do off-grid products. They wanted to do multiple scales, which we'll see here in a little bit, and they needed multiple formats that they exported the information out to. USGS used a phased development and implementation approach. Starting in September of 2015, they prototyped the ability to generate that US topo map from the COT software using the Esri product on demand. And they used that prototype process over 5 months to develop the requirements for their standard US topo product. And that led us into phase 2, starting in midway through 2016. And we developed all of the functionality they needed from their previous product, as well as some of the new abilities that we had in the prototype. And that was successfully deployed in the USGS cloud in June of 2017. The third phase of this project was a research and development project for demonstrating multi-scale mapping. It was done in collaboration with the US National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, or NGA, and Esri, along with USGS. They looked at, again, at the Esri pod COTS tools to generate the USGS, what they call the national map, which is their digital data, their authoritative data at 1 to 24,000 scale. And using that to generate data at 1 to 50,000 scale and 1 to 100,000 scale mapping. Once they were able to generate that data, they then used the product on demand to produce the 1 to 50,000 scale and 1 to 100,000 scale output products, digital data as well as maps. And so they were able to incorporate the USGS, the national map, authoritative data, generalize that data on the fly as each map was produced. And then they were able to generate multiple formats, geospatial PDFs, GeoTIFFs, and Esri map packages. This work was the basis for supporting hurricane response that came up. This is an example of the USGS Topo product on demand. You can see the number that users are able to select a number of scales, whatever they want to produce on demand. They can produce the 1 to 24,000 scale, the 1 to 50,000 scale, and the 1 to 100,000 scale. However, they would quickly find that they could also use this app to produce 1 to 250,000 scale products on demand. That was precipitated by Hurricane Harvey that hit just 2 months later. Many of you are probably familiar with Hurricane Harvey. It was a Category 4 hurricane with winds of 115 knots. It had large-scale flooding, up to 10 feet in some areas. That was produced by over 60 inches of rainfall, historic amounts of rainfall in a very short amount of time, and did well in excess of $125 billion in damage, and unfortunately had a number of deaths related to it. So a request came into USGS's National Geospatial Program from the first responders, particularly the National Guard, that needed authoritative maps for search and rescue. So the initial request was for 1 to 24,000 scale topographic maps for the affected areas. However, they quickly found for some of their large-scale strategic planning and logistics, that was too small of an area and required too many maps. So they also had a need for a 1 to 250K topographic map. So in response to this, the USGS partnered with the Defense Logistics Agency to provide, first of all, the 1 to 24,000 scale maps used for the search and rescue activities. They printed over 9,000 unique maps and delivered those. But in addition, they also started the process of generating the 1 to 250,000 scale maps to, again, use that for planning purposes and logistics and moving information, moving resources to the affected areas. So just to give you a picture, this is a 1 to 24,000 scale US topo map. And it's you can see it can be used for street level search and rescue operations. But they also had this need for 1 to 250,000 scale. And you can see the difference here. The red square represents the 1 to 24,000 scale topographic map that was used for the detailed street level operations. But they also had this need for this larger area, the 1 to 250,000 scale, for doing the large area planning and strategic planning and moving of resources. So how did they produce this 1 to 250K? They did it in a very short amount of time. In 8 days, they used the product on demand. After an initial planning meeting on the 29th of August, USGS spent about 2 days planning what the map design would look like for the final product. And then Esri worked with USGS to customize or set up the product on demand to be able to do this new 1 to 250,000 scale product that could then just be generated on the fly. They did that from the 1st through the 4th of September, so over 4 days. They exported all of the maps and did the quality control on them, and then on the 4th of September delivered those to the Hazards Data Distribution System and the Defense Logistics Agency for printing, which they did in a little over 24 hours and delivered to the first responders on the 5th of September. That same process was used in the Hurricanes Irma in Florida and Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico in the following week. So this is an example of one of the 1 to 250,000 scale maps produced from the product on demand over the Houston area where Hurricane Harvey was. And this is all of the 65 different maps that were produced of the hurricane areas for Hurricane Harvey in Texas, Hurricane Irma in Florida, and Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico in the lower right there. So the results of all of these operations were immediately delivering the 1 to 24,000 scale maps, over 9,000 unique maps, out to the first responders for urban search and rescue and the detailed street level planning. But they were also able to deliver the 1 to 250,000 scale, again, working in collaboration with the Defense Logistics Agency to deliver these print products to the first responders for operational planning, strategic planning, and to the emergency management agencies for situational awareness. These are some of the first responders that received the maps, and you can see images there of them delivering some of the 9,000 individual maps that were printed and distributed. And here we can see them in the search and rescue operations as they were looking at their street-by-street search coordinates and corridors. So what was the value? What was the return on this? To USGS, they were able to demonstrate they could use the product, the prototype product on demand and deliver very quickly. And they were able to modify it to be able to create these 1 to 250,000 scale maps. And they did that in 8 days, from the initial planning all the way to the delivery of the printed maps to the first responders. They were able to reduce the resources that they needed to generate these maps. They did it in a semi-automated fashion, where historically it would have been done manually through a custom desktop mapping and would have taken much longer. And they were able to be responsive to their customers' needs. They also were able to take what they learned in this process and bring it back into their research development that they're doing on the multi-scale mapping and the customized mapping that they do. The value to the first responders were that they were able to, at all levels of government, through emergency coordinators and emergency management, were able to manage the responsibility of the pre-storm evacuations, the search and rescue missions, the recovery operations, and many of the other tasks that they needed to weather storms. The planning and the execution of the operations began and revolved around maps, especially paper maps when power was not available or cellular services had been disrupted or were down. Having these authoritative maps available at the right location and at the right time was critical to the effective operations for the storm response. So my colleague Steve Snow is going to show you how some of the USGS product on demand capabilities were used here and how it was used to support the hurricane response. Steve?
Thanks, Mark. So here you can see that we have the USGS's product on demand, or POD. You can see this grid that's laid over it. This is each of the 1 to 24,000 series maps. So users who want to access the maps have access to the 1 to 24,000, the 1 to 50,000, the 1 to 100,000, as well as the 1 to 250,000 scale map products, with plans to support more products in the near future. So for this demonstration, we're going to focus on an area near Houston that was hit particularly hard by Harvey. So South Houston, Texas. And I'm going to zoom out a bit so we can see a little bit of the area here. So what we have is an area interest right here. I believe it's near the airport, William Hobby Airport. So from the previous demo, you can see that we can select multiple products if we have geographic areas where operations are happening. Additionally, we know that this Hurricane Harvey traveled from the west to the east, and this whole area was just really flooded. So one of the nice things to support access to these geospatial products is the ability to either drop in a polygon to bring in all the mapping products, or to, in this case, we're going to use create a line to bring in the products that we need to support operations. So we know that we're going to be working along Highway 56 here. So what we can do is we can create what's essentially a map series that we can provide automated mapping to support all of our operations. And as you can see, we have 29 different products being developed. This is a great way to pick out specific products, multiple scales, to support many different teams. Now you have different options here. You can export the products straight away, as you saw in the last demo, or we can also put together batch export operations. So the ability to support not just one area, but multiple areas, multiple teams. This is just really a great way to support those people in the field that are working hard to make everybody's life better. So in summary, as you can see, we can support multiple first responder teams with automated production and dissemination. We currently have on the screen here 29 products. I'm not going to try to download them all right now. But the idea is that we can supply maps over large geographic areas with the most up-to-date USGS topo data available that can be downloaded on demand. You can think of this as supplying the best information available night or day to the teams that need it. Thanks, Mark. Back to you.
All right, thank you, Steve. So we're going to give the audience here an opportunity to respond again, and we've got one last poll question. Does your organization have the need to respond to timely events like we saw with the hurricane with your map data? So we'll give you an opportunity to respond here, and we'll get a sense of how many of you are responding to these types of emergencies. And we'll just leave it out for one more second there. And looks like we've got, let's go ahead and close it out. With 2/3 of you responding, looks like we've got about 50% are saying yes, you have a need to respond to emergency or some sort of events. And again, about 25% no, and 25% not applicable. So similar results to our first question. So thank you for your input and your information there. And what I'd like to do is just kind of summarize is that Steve and I have shown you the automation of multiple scales of product on demand. We showed you the USGS's use of the product on demand to deliver their authoritative information to their customers. And we showed the product on demand in support of a disaster response and recovery with Hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria. This has been the first in our webinar series on transformation through automation. And we'll have future webinars looking at automation and multi-scale mapping, as well as the use of imagery and automating processes. You can see the link below. You can register for these future webinars in the series. And the next one will be on September 5th on multi-resolution mapping. And now we're going to open up the ability for you to ask any questions you've got. So we invite you to just put your questions into the questions window there. and we'll answer them as we come to them. We've got one question is, how did USGS decide to host their product on demand in the cloud? Well, the USGS wanted to leverage some of the advantages of the cloud, particularly the ability to process large amounts of data in a short amount of time. The automation in the product on demand requires a lot of computer processing, and USGS used the elastic aspect of the cloud to quickly spin up capacity when they needed it during the disaster. And then when the disaster response dwindled, USGS simply had to reduce the cloud computing they needed and take it back to normal levels. Another question is, how can I get more information about the product on demand? Well, let's see. First of all, the product on demand app is part of the Esri production mapping product. And then the other thing is, in the survey at the end of the webinar, there's a place for you to request more information. You can just put that in there. We'll be happy to send you more information. And let's see. Again, any questions you have, we'll try and answer here. So we've got a question. So what's required to run the product on demand? Well, first you need your map data in a seamless geodatabase. Second, that data is going to be used to generate the finished map. So you need to specify what you want that finished map to look like. These are your cartographic rules for your typical map products, and you generate those rules and then apply them to your data to those rules. So then you configure how that data will look on the map, and you generate the cartographic rules to symbolize the map and create the map surround information that you saw Steve show. To do this, you'll need ArcGIS Enterprise, and you'll need the Esri production mapping products. Those are the main elements of what you would need. Again, if we've got any questions, just type them into the window. And not seeing any other questions, we'll give you a couple more minutes. All right, well, not seeing any additional questions. So I think we'll go ahead and move on. So I'd like to thank everybody for attending the webinar today. We hope to see you again in our next webinar series on September 5th. And we invite you to take the survey at the end of this. It'll only take a few minutes, and you can do that fairly quickly. And we thank you for your time, and look forward to seeing you on September 5th. Thank you.